Happy holidays, everyone. Today I'm going to be comparing two videos, one by DarkMatter2525 and the other by JaclynGlenn, to an article in the Creation Evolution Journal's issue 11 in winter 1983 by Robert A. Moore entitled The Impossible Voyage of Noah's Ark.
Do you have any idea how much an animal eats in 1 year? I mean, 2 elephants are going to require 365,000 pounds of food and 36,500 gallons of water.
Where the hell is he going to get all this food? 2 elephants need 365,000 pounds of food and 36,000 gallons of water.
Moore's reference to how much an elephant can eat can be found on page 28.
What water, Jeffrey? It's going to be raining.
Yeah, for 40 days. What are they going to do for the other 325 days?
Well, God told Noah to prepare every kind of food that was to be eaten. Not to mention the water that they're going to need, and it's only raining 40 days, so you got to figure that shit out too.
Moore's mention of the problems of clean water can be found on page 28 and 29 of his paper.
I mean, the giraffes are going to need 54,750 pounds of food. The hippos are going to need 65,700 pounds of food. The 2 lions are going to need 16,060 pounds of meat. I mean, all that meat's going to rot. God, have you thought this through?
Giraffes need 54,750 pounds of food. Hippos need 65,700. Lions need 16,000 pounds of meat. Oh yeah, and I hope Noah didn't forget to bring a freezer, or else all that meat's going to rot.
Moore mentions the problem of food rotting on pages 27 and 28.
Yeah, but I did that, and that still leaves us with 17,400 birds, 12,000 reptiles, 9,000 mammals, 5,000 amphibians, and 2 billion insects.
It seems kind of impossible to fit all the food on the ship, much less all the animals, which includes 17,400 birds, 9,000 mammals, 12,000 reptiles, 5,000 amphibians, and 2 million insects.
Starting on page 14 of his paper, Moore writes about the different kinds of animals that would have been on the Ark and how many there were.
Look, none of this even really matters anyway, because you said that the floodwaters are going to cover all of the mountains under the heavens by a depth of 20 feet. That's going to put the altitude of the floodwaters at 29,055 feet. All the animals are going to freeze to death. Those that don't freeze to death are going to become exhausted just from trying to breathe in an atmosphere that has 33% less oxygen, and they're going to suffocate. This is going to be disastrous, God. Disastrous.
So let's just pretend that none of that shit matters. Everything is just fine. Nothing has killed us yet. We're all just living on the Ark, all happy. Well, now we have to think about altitude, because we rose to at least 29,000 feet to cover Mount Everest. So we're going to try to not freeze to death at this point. That's pretty damn high. At least the animals are going to have a difficult time breathing.
Moore talks about ventilation and oxygen levels on page 30 and 31 of his paper, but I found numbers that mirror the exact numbers that DarkMatter2525 and JaclynGlenn have in their videos in posts on the internet as early as 2004, which does kind of show that there might be an intermediary source in this chain of plagiarism between Moore's paper and JaclynGlenn and DarkMatter2525.
God, not even most of the sea life is going to survive.
What, Jeffrey? It's going to be covered with water, perfect for sea life.
Are you kidding me? You're going to be changing the water temperature, the water pressure, the light filtration. Salt water is going to be mixing with fresh water. God, it's going to kill most aquatic life too.
Then we have to think about all the different variations of sea life that are just going to die. First of all, the sunlight's not going to get deep enough in the water for the plants, so the fish and all the other aquatic life aren't going to have nutrients. They're going to die. Salt water and fresh water are going to mix. Sorry if that's offensive to Islam, but in fact it does mix. So then all the fish are going to die, and all the different, I mean, it's just ridiculous. Everything's going to fucking die.
Oxygen levels in the water, light filtration, and temperature levels are all spoken of in Moore's paper on page 31.
Okay, I see your point.
Oh, and I just thought of something else too. Even if the animals survive the trip, well, what are they going to do when they get off the boat? The herbivores aren't going to have any vegetation to eat because it's all going to be wiped out by the flood.
And even if none of that shit happened, now we have to think about after the flood is over. The purpose of the flood was to kill all land life. Nothing is left What are the animals going to eat? What are the herbivores going to eat? All the trees, all the plants are dead.
On page 34, Moore describes the problems of releasing animals into a world with no vegetation left, and in fact goes so far as to say, it seems that there must have been a period when all the animals were programmed, like the serpent in Eden, to subsist on dust.
And the carnivores aren't going to have any animals to eat. Every time they do eat an animal, they're going to make an entire species go extinct.
What are the carnivores going to eat? I mean, every time they eat an animal, they're going to make an entire species go extinct.
This is a point where I feel that these videos don't do the original justice, in that they're not as imaginative as the original, because Moore imagined a world where the animals were turned from carnivores into herbivores to eat hay on the ark, and then turned back into carnivores when they were released, but they were given specifically only a desire to eat rotten carrion that was killed by the flood, so that, you know, all the other animals that were alive could escape the lions, you know.
And that really brings me to my last point, God. 2 individuals of a species is not enough to propagate an entire species. I mean, you need at least 50 individuals of a species in order for there to be a proper amount of genetic diversity. And with only 2, I mean, you have to inbreed. And with all that inbreeding, there's going to be severe genetic defects. I mean, this is not going to work, God. We're going to have to think of something else.
And speaking of going extinct, the only way to prevent everything from going extinct is through lots and lots of incestual inbreeding. That's the only way to prevent it from happening. Like, you know, because there's nothing that could ever go wrong with that, like severe genetic defects, you know, because that's not a problem, right?
And on pages 6 through 8 of his paper, Moore describes the genetic problems that you would get when you limit the samples that you take from each species to just 2. In conclusion, I'd just like to say that DarkMatter2525 and JaclynGlenn can set this right by simply putting in the description box of their video the source of the information that they used. Also, I hope that this video creates a little side conversation about how hard it is to find the original source of information when there are so many plagiarists for these facts and figures over so many years with so many different iterations and changes, like Chinese whispers or the game of telephone in kindergarten. It's mind-boggling how hard it is to track down the original source of information sometimes because of all this plagiarism that happens over years. Happy holidays, everyone, and congratulations to Jaclyn and Richie for your wonderful marriage.